The doors were 300 feet tall. They were made from metal that humanity had never seen before, dark and cold and older than Earth itself. When they opened, the sound echoed like thunder through the hearts of the three humans who stood before them. Ambassador Marcus Holt took a breath. Behind him stood Commander Elena Vance and Dr. Thomas Red. Together, they were all that stood between Earth and extinction. They had been given no warning, no explanation. 12 hours ago, a fleet of alien warships had appeared in Earth's orbit, blocking out the sun over every major city. The message had been simple: send representatives. Now Marcus stepped forward into the Galactic Council's judgment chamber, and for a moment, his mind could not process what he saw. The chamber was carved into the heart of an asteroid, the size of a small moon. It stretched upward for miles, a hollow mountain of crystal and stone, filled with thousands upon thousands of alien beings. They sat in galleries that spiraled toward a ceiling lost in darkness. Some were tall and thin, with skin like blue glass. Others were masses of tentacles and eyes. Some floated in containment fields filled with gases that would kill a human in seconds. Some were made of light. Some were made of shadow. All of them were looking down at the three tiny humans who had just entered their domain. The silence was absolute. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. He could feel Elena tensing beside him, her military training screaming at her to find exits, to assess threats, to survive. He could sense Thomas's scientific mind racing to categorize and understand. But there was no time for any of that. At the center of the chamber, raised on a platform of living stone that pulsed with inner light, sat 7 beings. They were the arbiters, the supreme rulers of the Galactic Council. The oldest among them was called Krill. He was wrapped in robes that seemed woven from frozen starlight, and his 4 eyes studied the humans with an expression that was impossible to read. Species designation human, Krill announced. His voice did not come from his mouth. It appeared directly in Marcus's mind, translated by technology far beyond anything Earth possessed. Planet of origin Earth, Sol System. You have been summoned to answer for your crimes against the Galactic Accord. Marcus felt his blood run cold. Crimes. They had committed crimes against laws they never knew existed, written by civilizations they never knew were real. High Arbiter, Marcus said, keeping his voice steady through sheer force of will. Humanity was unaware of any galactic accord. We have only recently achieved faster-than-light communication. We have never made contact with another species until today. Laughter rippled through the galleries. It was not human laughter. It clicked and buzzed and resonated in frequencies that made Marcus's teeth ache. Several delegates pointed at the humans with limbs that bent in wrong directions. Ignorance is not a defense, spoke another arbiter. Her name was Syndra, and her body was made of shifting geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Your species has committed the gravest violation possible. You have developed the Forbidden's technology. Elena's hand moved toward her sidearm before she stopped herself. There was nowhere to run. No enemy she could fight. They were completely surrounded by beings who could destroy Earth with a thought. What technology? Marcus asked carefully. Please help us understand what we have done wrong. The chamber fell silent again. This time, the silence had weight. It pressed down on Marcus like a physical force. He saw fear in the eyes of delegates who had never known fear. He saw ancient beings shift uncomfortably in their seats. High Arbiter Krill leaned forward. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper that somehow filled the entire chamber. You have developed the ability to persist. Marcus did not understand. He looked at Thomas, who shook his head. 37 species have been exterminated for developing persistence, Krill continued. The ability to survive what should kill you. The ability to continue fighting when your body has failed. The ability to refuse death through sheer force of will. It is the most dangerous weapon in the universe, and your species possesses it naturally. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. They were talking about willpower. They were talking about determination. They were talking about the simple human ability to keep going when everything said they should stop. Every human on your planet carries this weapon, Sindra added. Your history is filled with examples. Soldiers who fought after being mortally wounded. Survivors who lived through conditions that should have killed them. Athletes who pushed past physical limitations. Scientists who refused to accept failure. This ability to persist, to endure, to simply refuse to die, it cannot be allowed to exist. Thomas stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. Are you saying that other species cannot do this? That willpower is unique to humans? Other species know their limits, Krill replied. When their bodies fail, they accept death. When logic says something is impossible, they stop trying. Humans do not. Humans look at impossible odds and choose to fight anyway. Humans face certain death and refuse to accept it. This makes you the most dangerous species the galaxy has ever known. Marcus understood now. The galaxy was not afraid of human weapons or human technology. They were afraid of the human spirit. They were afraid of the one thing that could not be taken away, the ability to choose, to persist, to never give up. The fear in the chamber suddenly made sense. These ancient beings had ruled for thousands of years by being stronger than everyone else. But strength meant nothing against an enemy who simply refused to lose. You have 72 hours to present your defense, Krill announced. After that, this council will vote on humanity's fate. If you are found guilty, your species will be exterminated. Your planet will be sterilized. No trace of humanity will remain. Marcus looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at him. He looked at Elena, whose eyes burned with defiance. He looked at Thomas, whose mind was already racing toward solutions. Then Ambassador Marcus Holt did something that made the entire Galactic Council fall silent. He smiled. "High Arbiter," he said, and his voice carried clearly through the massive chamber. "If the ability to persist is a crime, then I am afraid you have made a terrible mistake bringing us here, because you have just given us something to fight for." The lights in the chamber flickered. Several delegates gasped. High Arbiter Krill sat back in his seat, and for the first time in 1,000 years, he felt something he had almost forgotten. He felt doubt. Outside, circling Earth like wolves around prey, Council warships waited for the order to fire. But inside the Judgment Chamber, 3 humans stood alone against the entire galaxy, and they were not afraid. The clock had started. 72 hours to save humanity. 72 hours to prove that the human spirit was not a weapon to be feared, but a gift to be shared. The trial of Earth had begun, and Marcus knew one thing with absolute certainty: humanity would not go. Quietly, 60 hours remained, Dr. Thomas. Reed had not slept since they arrived at station. Prime, his eyes burned as he stared at the holographic screen floating above his borrowed workstation. The Council had given them access to historical archives as part of their defense preparation. They probably expected the humans to waste time learning about galactic law. Thomas had found something far more important. "Marcus," he called out, his voice cracking. "Elena, you need to see this." The human delegation's quarters were small and cold, barely large enough for 3 people to move without touching. Ambassador Marcus Holt looked up from the legal documents he had been studying. Commander Elena Vance stopped her pacing and moved to Thomas's side. "What did you find?" Marcus asked. Thomas pointed at the screen with a trembling finger. A star map floated in the air, showing thousands of points of light. One point was highlighted in red. The Council said they destroyed 37 species for developing persistence, Thomas said. But the records show something different. The species were not destroyed. They disappeared. Elena frowned. What is the difference? When the Council destroys a species, there are records. Battle reports. Casualty numbers. Evidence of the extinction. But for the persistent species, there is nothing. No battles. No bodies. They simply vanished overnight, as if they were never there. Marcus leaned closer to the screen. Are you saying these species escaped? I am saying something stranger than that. Thomas zoomed in on the highlighted star. The first persistent species was discovered 10,000 years ago. The Council sent a fleet to destroy them, but when the ships arrived, the planet was empty. Every person, every building, every piece of technology was gone. The only thing left behind was a single transmission. Thomas played the recording. A voice spoke in a language that made no sense, but the translation appeared below. We will return when the children are ready. The room fell silent. Elena spoke first. Children? What children? Thomas changed the display. Now it showed a single coordinate, a point in space that glowed brighter than all the others. I decrypted this from a classified Council file. It shows the location of that first persistent species, the planet they lived on before they disappeared. Thomas paused, his voice barely above a whisper. The coordinates point to Mars. Marcus felt the floor shift beneath his feet. Mars, the first persistent species, had lived in humanity's own solar system. 10,000 years ago. Why? The humans were still learning to farm. Another civilization had stood where rovers now crawled across red sand. That is impossible, Elena said. We have explored Mars. There is nothing there. Nothing on the surface, Thomas replied. But what about below it? Before anyone could respond, the door to their quarters opened. A tall alien with blue crystalline skin entered without permission. Marcus recognized him from the galleries, a young delegate from a minor species who had watched the proceedings with unusual interest. Observer Valax, Marcus said carefully. We were not expecting visitors. Valax looked around nervously, as if expecting to be followed. I do not have much time. They are watching you, Ambassador. Some members of the Council have already decided that humanity must die, regardless of what evidence you present. Who? Elena demanded. Fleet Commander Orvax leads the faction. He believes humans are too dangerous to be allowed to live. He is already positioning his ships for a strike on Earth if the vote does not go his way. Valax moved closer, his voice dropping. But that is not why I came. I came to warn you about something worse. What could be worse than extinction? Marcus asked. Valax's crystalline features seemed to darken. The Council does not fear what you are, Ambassador. They fear what you will become. There is a prophecy among the oldest species, a warning passed down for 10,000 years. It speaks of the children who will return, the children who will end the Council's reign. Thomas felt ice crawl down his spine. The children. The same word from the transmission. Every sign points to humanity, Valax continued. Your location, your abilities, your timing. The Council has spent 10,000 years preparing for your arrival, and most of them want to destroy you before you can fulfill the prophecy. Marcus stepped forward. What does the prophecy say we will do? Valax shook his head. No one knows. The prophecy only says that when the children return, nothing will ever be the same. He moved toward the door. I have said too much. Be careful, Ambassador. You have more enemies here than you know. He left as quickly as he had come. The three humans stood in silence for a long moment. Elena was the first to move. She activated a secure communication device hidden in her uniform. I need to contact Earth. Admiral Cross needs to know about Orvax's ships. Do it, Marcus agreed. But quietly. We do not know who might be listening. While Elena worked on the transmission, Thomas continued searching through the archives. He found more references to the first persistent species, fragments of history that someone had tried to erase. They had been called the Founders. They had not just lived on Mars. They had ruled an empire that spanned 100 systems. And they had not been destroyed by the Council. They had destroyed themselves. Or rather, they had erased themselves deliberately. I found something else, Thomas said. A name. The Founders kept records of their origin world. The planet where they evolved before spreading across the galaxy. He pulled up the file. It was not Mars. Mars was just their nearest colony. Their home world was somewhere else. Where? Marcus asked. Thomas looked up at him with eyes full of shock and wonder. Earth. The Founders came from Earth. They were human. The revelation hung in the air like a physical weight. 10,000 years ago, humanity had ruled the stars. They had been so powerful that the entire galaxy feared them. And then, for reasons unknown, they had given it all up. They had returned to Earth, erased their own memories, and started over as Primitive. Thought the humans in this room were not a young species facing ancient empires. They were the descendants of the oldest empire of all. Why? Elena asked, her transmission to Earth forgotten. Why would they give up everything? Before Thomas could answer, his screen flickered. A new message appeared, text in a language he could not read, but one word repeated over and over, and his translator caught it. Awaken. 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 At that exact moment, on Mars, something that had slept for 10,000 years opened its eyes. Admiral David Cross stood in the command center on Earth, watching the Council fleet circle his planet. A junior officer rushed to his station with a report. Sir, we are detecting unusual readings from Mars. Something is happening beneath the surface. Cross looked at the data. Deep underground, massive energy signatures were activating in sequence. Something was waking up. Get me the ambassador, Cross ordered. Now. But before the connection could be made, the ground on Mars began to shake. Dust that had sat undisturbed for millennia rose into the thin atmosphere. And from beneath the red sand, something began to rise. A structure of black metal, larger than any city on Earth, was emerging from the planet's surface. It was a pyramid, and it was covered in symbols that glowed with ancient light. The children had been called home. And the galaxy was about to learn that humanity's story was far older than anyone had imagined. Chaos erupted in the judgment chamber. Every screen on Station Prime showed the same impossible image. A pyramid of black metal, 5 miles across and 2 miles high, was rising from the surface of Mars. It moved slowly, impossibly, defying every law of physics that the galaxy understood. Ambassador Marcus Holt stood at the center of the storm. Alien delegates screamed in languages that translators could not process. Some fled toward the exits. Others dropped to what might have been knees and began to pray to gods humanity had never heard of. The 7 arbiters were on their feet, their ancient composure shattered. What have you done? High Arbiter Krill demanded. His voice thundered through the chamber with barely contained fury. Marcus looked up at the towering figure without flinching. We have done nothing, but I believe our ancestors have. Arbiter Syndra's geometric form flickered violently. This is impossible. The Founders were erased. We watched them disappear. You watched them choose to disappear, Thomas corrected. He had been studying the archives frantically since the structure began to rise. They did not run from you. They did not hide. They left something behind and waited for us to find it. On the screens, the pyramid had fully emerged from the Martian surface. It sat on the red sand like a mountain that had always been there waiting. Strange lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that seemed almost like breathing. Admiral, Cross's voice crackled through the human delegation's communication device. "Ambassador, we are receiving a transmission from the structure. It is asking for permission to interface with Earth's communication networks." Marcus exchanged a glance with Elena. They were making decisions that would affect all of humanity, with no time to consult anyone. "Granted," Marcus said. The pyramid's lights flashed once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice filled the judgment chamber. It was neither male nor female, neither old nor young. It spoke in perfect English, but with an accent that no living human had ever heard. "I am the custodian. I have waited 10,000 years for this moment." The chamber fell silent. Even the panicking delegates stopped to listen. "Who are you?" Marcus asked. "I am the guardian of humanity's true heritage. I was created by the founders to watch over Earth until their children were ready to reclaim their place among the stars." The custodian paused. "The children have arrived. The awakening begins." Back on Earth, Dr. Maya Torres received the order that would change her life. She was a xenorchaeologist, though that title had seemed like a joke until 12 hours ago. Now she was leading a team toward the Martian pyramid, riding in a shuttle that Earth's scientists had barely managed to launch. The pyramid's surface opened as they approached. A doorway appeared where none had existed before, wide enough to fly the shuttle through. Maya's hands shook on the controls, but she did not stop inside. The pyramid was even larger than it appeared. The walls were lined with machines that hummed with quiet power. Lights activated as the humans passed, as if the structure was waking up around them. "Welcome, children," the custodian said. Its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You have questions. I have waited 10,000 years to answer them." Maya stepped out of the shuttle. Her team followed, their weapons drawn but useless against technology they could not comprehend. "What happened to the founders?" Maya asked. "Why did they leave?" "They did not leave. They reset." The custodian's voice carried something that might have been sadness. 10,000 years ago, humanity ruled 100 systems. We had technology that made the current council look primitive. And we had something no other species possessed: the ability to persist. In the judgment chamber, Thomas listened to the same transmission. The pieces were finally falling into place. "The other species feared you," Thomas said. "They feared what you could do. They feared what we could become," the custodian corrected. "The Galactic Council was young then, barely 1,000 years old. They saw humanity spreading across the galaxy, unstoppable and uncontrollable. They demanded that we submit to their rule, accept their laws, limit our expansion. When we refused, they gathered their fleets and came to destroy us." High Arbiter Krill's face had turned pale. This was a history he had never learned, hidden even from the Arbiters themselves. "What happened?" Marcus asked. "We could have won," the custodian said simply. "Our technology was superior. Our will was unbreakable. We could have destroyed the Council and ruled the galaxy by force." A long pause. But that was not who we chose to be. Maya walked deeper into the pyramid. Holographic displays activated around her, showing images of ancient Earth, of massive ships, of cities that floated among the stars. "The founders made a different choice," the custodian continued. "Rather than fight a war that would devastate the galaxy, they chose to reset. They destroyed their own technology. They erased their own memories. They returned to Earth and started over as primitives, giving the galaxy time to mature." "Why?" Elena demanded. "Why would they sacrifice everything?" "Because they believed in mercy. They believed that given enough time, the other species would learn to see persistence not as a threat, but as a gift. They hoped that when humanity returned, the galaxy would be ready to welcome them as partners, instead of fearing them as conquerors." The chamber was utterly silent. Thousands of alien delegates stared at the humans with new eyes. Were they right? Marcus asked quietly, "Is the galaxy ready?" Before the custodian could answer, alarms began to blare throughout Station Prime. Red lights flashed. Emergency announcements echoed in a dozen languages. Fleet Commander Orvax's voice cut through the chaos. "This changes nothing. The humans have activated a founder weapon. They have proven themselves to be exactly what we feared." On the screens, hundreds of ships were breaking away from the Council fleet. They were not moving toward Mars. They were moving toward Earth. "I am taking matters into my own hands," Orvax announced. "Humanity will be exterminated before they can use the founder technology against us." Marcus turned to Krill. "You have to stop him." Krill's 4 eyes were filled with conflict. "I cannot. Orvax commands his own fleet. By the time the Council can act, your planet will be destroyed." In the pyramid, Maya found herself standing before a massive chamber. Weapons lined the walls, weapons that could destroy entire fleets with a single shot. The custodian's voice spoke directly into her mind. "The children must choose. These weapons can protect Earth. They can destroy the attacking fleet in seconds. But using them will prove the Council's fears correct. Humanity will become the monster they always believed you to be." Maya stared at the weapons. Earth was in danger. Her family was in danger. Everything she loved was about to be destroyed. "There has to be another way," she said. "There is always another way," the custodian replied. "But it requires something harder than fighting. It requires faith. Faith in the choice your ancestors made. Faith in the species you want to become." On Station Prime, Marcus watched the attack fleet accelerate toward Earth. He watched 300 warships prepare to murder 8 billion people, and he made his decision. "Thomas," he said, "tell me everything the custodian knows about human persistence. If we cannot fight our way out of this, we will have to will our way out." The clock was ticking. The weapons were ready. And humanity faced the hardest choice of all. Would they become conquerors? Or would they prove that mercy was stronger than fear? 17 hours remained. Commander Elena Vance stood on the bridge of a stolen Council vessel, watching Earth grow larger in the viewscreen. They had escaped Station Prime with help from Observer Valax and Historian Morik, 2 aliens who had decided that genocide was not acceptable regardless of ancient fears. Behind Elena, Marcus and Thomas worked frantically with data streaming from the Martian pyramid. The custodian had revealed something that changed everything. Human persistence was not just the ability to survive. It was the ability to project will itself into the physical world. The founders could do things that seemed like magic, Thomas explained rapidly. They could heal wounds by refusing to die. They could bend probability by insisting on success. And at their peak, when millions of them focused together, they could create shields of pure willpower that nothing could penetrate. Elena watched the attack fleet on her sensors. 300 warships were entering Earth's orbit. Their weapons were armed. Their targeting systems were locked on cities across every continent. Admiral Cross's voice came through the communication system. "Ambassador, we have armed the founder weapons in the pyramid. On your order, we can destroy their entire fleet before they fire a single shot." Marcus closed his eyes. The easy choice would be to fight, to prove that humanity could not be threatened without consequences, to show the galaxy that attacking Earth meant death. But Marcus remembered the custodian's words. The founders had faced the same choice 10,000 years ago. They could have won the war. They could have conquered the galaxy. Instead, they chose mercy. "The weapons remain powered down," Marcus ordered. "We are not going to fire." "Ambassador, with respect." "They are going to kill billions of people," Cross protested. "Then we will find another way to stop them." In the pyramid on Mars, Dr. Maya Torres stood before a different kind of machine. The custodian had shown her the shield generator, a device that could protect Earth from any attack. But it did not run on power cells or reactors. It ran on human consciousness. The shield requires the focused will of humanity to activate, the custodian explained. Every person on Earth must choose to persist. They must refuse to accept destruction. Their combined determination will create a barrier that no weapon can breach. That is impossible, Maya said. You are asking 8 billion people to concentrate on the same thing at the same time. We cannot coordinate that. We do not have the technology. You do not need technology. You need belief. The custodian's voice softened. The founders knew this truth. Human willpower is not just strong. It is contagious. When one human refuses to give up, others follow. When enough humans stand together, their persistence becomes unstoppable. On the stolen vessel, Thomas received the same information. His eyes widened as he realized what had to be done. Marcus, he said urgently, we need to broadcast to Earth, to everyone. We need to tell them what is coming and ask them to fight back. Not with weapons, with their minds. Elena turned from the view screen. You want to ask 8 billion people to concentrate hard enough to create a force field? I want to ask 8 billion people to refuse to die, Thomas replied. That is something humans do every single day. We just need them to do it together. Marcus nodded slowly. Make the broadcast. Send it to every device on the planet. Let the people of Earth decide their own fate. The message went out across the planet. It appeared on phones and televisions and computers and radios. It reached hospitals and schools and prisons and homes. It found people who were sleeping and people who were working and people who were praying for salvation. This is Ambassador Marcus Holt. Earth is under attack. In 10 minutes, alien warships will begin firing on our cities. We cannot stop them with weapons, but we can stop them with our will. I am asking every human being to do something simple. Close your eyes. Focus on the people you love. Focus on the home you want to protect. And refuse to let it be destroyed. Do not accept death. Do not accept failure. Do not accept that this is the end. Believe that we will survive. Believe it with everything you have. Our strength is not in our technology. It is in our spirit. Together, we are unstoppable. 8 billion people heard the message. Mothers held their children. Soldiers stood at their posts. Scientists watched their screens. All across the planet, humanity did what it had always done in moments of crisis. They refused to give up. Maya felt it happen. In the pyramid, instruments that had been dormant for 10 millennia suddenly surged with power. The shield generator hummed to life, drawing energy from a source no sensor could detect. It is working, the custodian said, and its voice held something like awe. The children remember. In orbit, Fleet Commander Orvax watched the human planet with satisfaction. His weapons were ready. In seconds, human cities would burn. The threat would be eliminated forever. Fire, he commanded. 300 warships released their weapons simultaneously. Beams of energy that could crack continents streaked toward Earth's surface. They move at light speed, impossible to dodge, impossible to stop. And then they hit the shield. A sphere of golden light appeared around Earth. It was not solid. It flickered and pulsed like a living thing. It was made of 8 billion individual lights, each one representing a human who had chosen to persist. Orvax's weapons struck the shield and vanished. They did not explode. They did not scatter. They simply ceased to exist, absorbed into the combined will of humanity like rain into an ocean. Impossible, Orvax whispered. In the judgment chamber, thousands of alien delegates watched in stunned silence. They had expected slaughter. They had expected to witness the end of a species. Instead, They witnessed something that had not happened in 10,000 years. They witnessed humanity stand together. "Fire again," Orvax screamed. "All weapons. Everything we have." His fleet unleashed a barrage that could have shattered a moon. The shield absorbed it all. The golden light grew brighter with each attack, as if humanity was growing stronger from the assault. On Earth, people felt the attacks as pressure against their minds. Some wavered. Some nearly gave up. But whenever one person stumbled, others reached out to help them. Parents encouraged children. Strangers supported strangers. The entire human race linked together in an act of defiance that the galaxy had never seen. "You cannot break them." The custodian's voice rang through the foe. Chamber on Station Prime. "You cannot defeat a species that refuses to be defeated. The harder you push, the stronger they become. This is what the founders understood. This is what you have always feared." Orvax refused to accept it. If conventional weapons could not work, he would use unconventional means. "All ships," he commanded. "Ramming speed. If we cannot burn them, we will crush them." 300 warships accelerated toward Earth. They would impact the shield with their full mass. Even if the shield held, the collision would devastate the planet below. Marcus watched the approaching ships with cold determination. He turned to Thomas. The custodian said there was another option. A way to push them back without killing them. "What is it?" Thomas transmitted the question to Mars. The custodian's response came immediately. "The shield can be inverted. Instead of protecting, it can repel. Every ship will be thrown back into space, crews unharmed." A pause. "But the energy required will burn out the pyramid's core. The founder technology will be destroyed forever. You will lose access to your ancestors' weapons. You will face the galaxy as you are now, young and vulnerable." Elena grabbed Marcus's arm. "Do not even think about it. That technology is the only thing keeping us safe." "No," Marcus said quietly. "It is not." He looked at the shield surrounding Earth, at the golden light of 8 billion human souls refusing to die. Our strength was never in the technology. The founders knew that. They gave it up once before. They trusted that humanity would be enough. He opened a channel to the Martian pyramid. "Do it. Invert the shield." The golden light around Earth pulsed once, twice, 3 times. Then it exploded outward. Orvax's ships were not destroyed. They were caught in a wave of pure human will and hurled back into space like leaves in a hurricane. 300 vessels tumbled end over end, crews alive but helpless, thrown so far from Earth that it would take hours to return. In the pyramid, ancient machines shattered. Lights that had burned for 10,000 years went dark forever. The custodian's voice spoke one final time. "You have made your choice, children. You have proven what the founders always believed. Mercy is stronger than fear. The galaxy will never forget this day." Then silence on Station Prime. In the judgment chamber, before thousands of alien witnesses, Ambassador Marcus Holt stood tall. Humanity had been given the power to destroy its enemies. They had used it to save them instead. The trial was over. Now the galaxy had to decide what that meant. The judgment chamber had never been so full. Delegates from every species in the known galaxy had gathered to witness humanity's final verdict. The trial that had begun with 3 humans standing alone before an angry council now ended with those same humans standing before a galaxy transformed. Ambassador Marcus Holt was exhausted. 5 days without sleep. 5 days of fighting for the survival of his species. But he stood straight as High Arbiter Krill rose from his ancient seat. "Ambassador Holt," Krill said, and his voice carried none of the hostility that had filled it before. "You have presented this council with an impossible situation." Marcus waited. Behind him, Elena and Thomas stood shoulder to shoulder. Around the chamber, observer Valax and historian Morik watched with hope in their alien eyes. "By our laws, your species should be destroyed," Krill continued. "You possess abilities that threaten the stability of the galaxy. You cannot be controlled. You cannot be predicted. You cannot be stopped by any force we possess." The words hung in the air. Marcus did not flinch. "But you can choose." Krill paused, and something shifted in his ancient features. "In 5 days, humanity has made choices that no species in recorded history has ever made. You discovered you were not alone, and you did not panic. You discovered you were condemned, and you did not despair. You discovered you had the power to destroy your enemies, and you refused." Marcus remembered the golden shield. 8 billion humans standing together. The warships being thrown back without a single casualty. "You chose mercy," Krill said. "You destroyed your own greatest advantage to save the lives of those who tried to murder you. The Council has debated for hours. We have argued. We have fought among ourselves." He took a breath. But in the end, the vote was clear. The chamber fell absolutely silent. Humanity is not guilty. The words echoed through the crystal walls. Marcus felt his knees weaken. Eliada grabbed his arm to steady him. Thomas let out a breath he had been holding for 5 days. "You will not be destroyed," Krill continued. "Your planet will not be sterilized. Instead, the Galactic Council offers humanity full membership among the civilized species. You will have a voice in our assemblies. You will have protection under our laws. You will have the opportunity to prove what you claim to be." From the galleries, a sound began to rise. It started with observer Valax, clapping his crystalline hands together in a gesture of approval. Historian Morik joined him. Then others. Species that had feared humanity for 10,000 years now stood and acknowledged their courage. Not all of them. Fleet Commander Orvax sat in chains in the front row, his reptilian face twisted with fury. He had been arrested for his unauthorized attack, and now he waited for his own judgment. "You are making a mistake," Orvax snarled. "They will destroy us all. It is their nature. You cannot change what a species is." Marcus stepped forward. For a moment, he and Orvax locked eyes. "You are wrong," Marcus said quietly. "Our nature is to choose. 10,000 years ago, my ancestors chose mercy over conquest. Yesterday, we made the same choice. That is who we are." He turned away from the defeated commander. "What happens to you is not my concern. But I hope you live long enough to see that your fear was misplaced. Orvax's trial would come later. For now, the Council had more pressing matters. Arbiter Syndra, the geometric being who had been humanity's chief prosecutor, rose from her seat. Her form shifted in patterns that Thomas was beginning to recognize as uncertainty. "Ambassador," she said, "the Council has a question. You possessed weapons that could have ended this conflict instantly. You possessed technology that would have made humanity the dominant power in the galaxy. Why did you give it up?" Marcus considered the question. He thought about Earth, about the cities that had nearly burned, about the children who had added their voices to the shield. "Because power is not strength," he said finally. The founders understood that. They could have ruled the galaxy by force, but they chose a different path. They believed that one day the species of the galaxy would be ready to stand beside humanity as equals rather than beneath it as subjects. He looked around the chamber at the thousands of alien faces. Maybe that day has arrived. Maybe not. But we will never know if we become the monsters you feared. Syndra's form stabilized. "You are an unusual species, Ambassador. We are a species that chooses to hope." The formalities took hours. Documents were signed. Treaties were established. Humanity was officially welcomed into galactic civilization. When it was finally over, Marcus, Elena, and Thomas found themselves on the observation deck of Station Prime. Looking out at the stars. Earth was visible in the distance, a pale blue dot surrounded by ships. But these were not weapons of war anymore. They were an honor guard, council vessels assigned to protect humanity's home until permanent defenses could be established. So what happens now? Elena asked. Thomas smiled. Despite everything, despite nearly dying a dozen times, he was smiling. Now the real work begins. We have 10,000 years of history to uncover. The founders left knowledge scattered across 100 systems. Languages we need to learn. Technologies we need to understand. And somewhere out there might be other humans we have never met. Marcus nodded slowly. During the final hours of the trial, a mysterious figure had appeared briefly in the galleries. She had looked almost human, but not quite. She had spoken to Thomas in a language he almost recognized, and then vanished before anyone could question her. The founders had not just reset themselves on Earth. They had scattered, spreading seeds of humanity across the galaxy. Mars was just one site. There might be others. Cousins who had evolved along different paths. Brothers and sisters separated by 10,000 years. The galaxy thought our story was ending, Marcus said quietly. They did not understand. He turned to face his companions, the soldier and the scientist who had stood beside him through the impossible. Our story is just beginning. On Earth, celebrations erupted across every continent. The news of humanity's survival spread like wildfire. People who had focused their wills together just hours before now danced in the streets, cried in each other's arms, and looked up at the stars with new understanding. They were not alone. They had never been alone. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, their ancestors had left a legacy that was only now beginning to reveal itself. Dr. Maya Torres stood in the ruins of the Martian pyramid. The founder technology was gone, burned out by the inverted shield. But she had spent hours walking through the dark corridors, and she had found something the custodian had not mentioned. A map, a star map carved into the deepest wall, showing locations across the galaxy. Some were marked with symbols she recognized from Earth's oldest cave paintings. Others bore writing in languages that no human had spoken for millennia. These are waypoints, she realized. Locations of other founder sites. Other places where they left pieces of themselves. The journey ahead would take generations. Humanity would have to rebuild everything the founders had sacrificed. But they would not be doing it alone. Observer Valax had already pledged his species' support. Historian Morik had offered to serve as humanity's guide to galactic politics. Other species, moved by what they had witnessed, were reaching out with offers of alliance. And somewhere, in the depths between stars, the mysterious woman who had appeared at the trial watched humanity's first steps into a larger universe. She was not human, not exactly, but she was close enough. The children have passed their first test, she murmured to herself. But there will be others. The galaxy is larger than the Council knows, and older things than arbiters are beginning to wake. She turned away from her observation post and vanished into the darkness. Back on Station Prime, Marcus Holt took one last look at Earth, the pale blue dot that held everything he loved. The world that had nearly been destroyed and had saved itself through sheer force of will. Thank you, he whispered, to the founders who had sacrificed everything to give humanity a second chance. To the billions who had stood together when standing together was all they had. To the unlikely allies who had risked everything to help strangers. Elena put a hand on his shoulder. Come on, Ambassador. We have a galaxy to convince that we belong here. Marcus turned away from the window and walked toward his future. Behind him, the stars burned with ancient light, somewhere among them, humanity's children were waiting to be found. And the story that had begun with 3 humans facing judgment before the galaxy would become a legend that echoed across 10,000 worlds. The day the galaxy discovered what humanity really was. The day the children came home.